NFL Insider KC Joyner, thefootballscientist.com. Looking at a Week 7 slate. But first, we want to dive into last night's game between the Eagles and the Giants. Casey, not a clinic of great football last night, but there had to be a winner and it had to be a loser, and the Eagles come out on top. How did they do it? In the last 7 minutes there, the game really turned over, and all of a sudden you saw the Carson Wentz that we saw for a great majority of the 2017 season. I think the biggest problem with him for many people has been the lack of consistency. It's because of the way he played that forced him to have to play like that.
Yeah, and in the first half he was doing, well, the whole game, he was taking risks that maybe he shouldn't take. That one across-the-field pass in the first half where I'm looking at it going, John Elway could make that pass in his prime, but you can't. Nobody, there's maybe 2 quarterbacks in NFL history that can make that, and you're not one of them. So he's making those sorts of chances. But because he's being aggressive, we talked about this coming into this game and over last week, that they're trying to be more and more and more aggressive and making those sorts of plays and hitting Hightower on the one long pass. I mean, it's those sorts of things, being aggressive and going and saying, I've got these lousy players around me, but I got to trust them to make big plays and finding a way to do it. And Wentz is making the difference on those plays.
Early in the game, first series, they got the reverse handoff to Deshaun Jackson. Then they go right back to Jackson again. Jackson seems to be involved. They go down the field. They end up scoring a touchdown. Then the offense completely stalls. What happens?
I always wonder why these teams that try and set up the beginning plays, we're going to script the first 10, 15, 20 plays. Why don't you just script 60 plays? I mean, if it worked so well for those first few plays, if you know what you're going to do, we're going to do this, then they're going to counter, and we're going to do this, and we're going to plan that. I never understand why they don't have a second set of plays of that nature for the same thing, and I think that's why those first plays were successful, because they said this is, we're going to do these certain things, and we expect the Giants to adjust this way, and they did. Although I'll say that first drive, they were really, if you look at the first 5 plays, in fact, our running plays, 3 to Scott and 1 to Jackson, as you mentioned there, and they had 12, 5, 8, and 1 yard off of it. And I think once they got the 1 yard, they started going a little more to the passing game. But they were able to get the running game going all game long, and it's very basic blocking for them, but they were able to get it going, and that's something they can lean on in the future.
Obviously, they're banged up. I mean, the offensive line, you had Mailata out there who looks like he's going to be the left tackle for a little while here, at least until he gets hurt. You had Suopeta, who really, making his first NFL game. Herbig was at the right guard, and then Lane Johnson gets hurt again. Can they really expect to compete with that offensive line?
It's going to be tough, but what I liked about it is they didn't do the running stuff they're doing, the run blocking they're doing is some really basic stuff. You're not seeing even trap plays they weren't running yesterday, really. I mean, they were doing a couple quarterback draws, but then you're just mimicking pass blocking. They're not doing anything that complex, and yet they're very big. I got to give them credit on the offensive line. They've got a lot of size up front, even in these backups. They don't have guys who are of subpar height or weight. These are big boys up front, and they can still push people out of the way with some simple blocking. So I think they will be able to keep a good running game going if hopefully they can get some sort of help in the offensive line.
Yeah, I know losing Jackson is a big loss for them, because I thought, Casey, it would have been interesting to see what Fulgham and Jackson could have done as a group. They seem to complement each other. They're going to get Alshon Jeffrey back, but I don't see Fulgham and Jeffrey as a great complement.
I don't. It's really different. The thing about Jackson and Fulgham is if you're going to use Fulgham as the vertical threat, what do you do with Jackson? But it'd be nice to have competing vertical threats rather than just one guy. And Jeffrey's not a vertical threat. He's an all-around receiver. You can maybe play call him to get him open against certain coverages, against certain people, and you can get him open deep that way. But the good thing about if they have Jeffrey, though, that will almost mimic what they had with Ertz when Ertz was playing well in this offense before. You've got somebody who can threaten the middle of the field. If they could get Goddard back, too, I don't know what's going on there, but if they could get him back too, then you start getting some other options. But yeah, to have Fulgham, and to have Hightower that you can only hit one vertical pass on and such, they need something more. But it looks like help is going to be on the way, even if Jackson is out.
No, you're right, because they're hoping to get Goddard back, if not this week, the next week, probably after the bye week there. So they would have Goddard, you'd have Fulgham, Jeffrey, Rieger. What about having Rieger and Fulgham together?
I think that'd be a terrific combination. I mean, with Hightower on the one vertical pass yesterday, yeah, it's against the third-string cornerback, and it wasn't very good, but you can also do things with him. I think that would be the situation, too, where you can take Rieger and you can take Hightower, and that's kind of alternate looks that you say, look, we know we're not going to get much out of these guys, but if we go the other way and they're going to leave, fourth and fifth string cornerbacks covering these guys. We know we can run go routes and hit big plays, so I think they're going to have some alternate options there too. You can't lean on them, but you can get a play like that last night. You could probably get those once every couple games.
So if you're watching this team and you see the line, you know what Carson Wentz is and the weapons that they're lacking and what they actually have. What's the identity of the Eagles offense? What should the identity of the Eagles offense be?
It depends on if they could stay healthy. I don't think they have to get away from the running game. I think Scott showed yesterday he can do, if you're going to give him just straight middle zone runs, he can do middle zone, inside zone. That's what they can do. You don't need. I don't want these guys that didn't do any outside zone pretty much yesterday, which because they don't have the linemen to go out there and get on those vertical running plays or those horizontal running plays. But you can do certain things. So I'd like to see the power running play like that with the basic zone, and then keep you doing what they're doing in the passing game, finding the best matchups. Because that's what I like about Wentz the most is that he's finding really favorable matchups to go after, and that's a heads up on quarterback and coaching when you're finding the weaknesses in defenses. And by the way, defenses are going to keep getting banged up the rest of the year too, so you're going to be having these fourth and fifth string cornerbacks that offer those kind of opportunities.
All right, let's go over to the defense because obviously, the Giants are not a great offense, but they ran the ball. Gallman had some nice runs late. Jones, if they make that pass to Ingram, you're probably in a situation where you lose that game. So this Eagles defense still having issues. Why? They get pressure. The secondary is but the linebackers are obviously a problem. I didn't think they were horrendous last night, but overall, when you watch that defense, what are they lacking?
One of the things that they're lacking a lot of athleticism, like you said, at linebacker and at safety. And that's something that the Eagles, for years, you knew that they were going to have great athleticism, both at linebacker and safety, and now they really don't have that. One thing that threw me yesterday was they had the run to Jones. Schematically on that play, they were asking Graham to do far too much. It's a detailed explanation. We can't fit in this segment, but they were asking him to cover two gaps. They were asking him to, the things they were asking him to do, they were asking him to cover far too much ground, and he didn't have anybody behind him. I'm looking at that play as like a microcosm of what the Eagles' defense is that they've got players, they're asking certain players to do too much. We know Graham gets the sack at the end, so it's a great play at the end. We know what he can do, but they put him into a situation there. If he guessed wrong, it could have been a long gainer, and he did guess wrong, but you can't put him in that situation to ask him to do that. So I think maybe they need to find different ways to run their defense.
Yeah, it's they really rely on getting that pressure from up front. And if you look, you've played Cincinnati, who has an awful offensive line. You've now played the Giants, who have an awful offensive line. The recipe is to get pressure, and if they got pressure last night, they did. But if you're not generating enough pressure against those teams, you might have to rethink what your philosophy is.
Yeah, if you're going to get up against a team that has a very good offensive line, thankfully for them, the entire NFC East has pass blocking issues. When they get in those matchups, they'll be okay. But if you're going up against, if they were going to play, I don't know, say the Packers or a team with a very strong offensive line, and there are a few of them out there, yeah, I think the Eagles would be in a really bad way because you can't, as much as you want to say we're going to get a pass rush with 4, and if we don't, let's go 5, let's rush 6. There are philosophies to do that. But if you were this team and you said, hey, we can't get pass rush with 4, let's start blitzing and get 5 or 6 going, especially against a good team, you're going to get burned in a bad way. So, yeah, they've got some weaknesses in defense.
A couple of things before we look at each game here. Number one, the 80-yard run by Jones there. There's a huge breakdown on the defense, but man, oh, man. Now, they ended up scoring there, but that's obviously a major breakdown in the defense.
It was because they asked Graham to. It's hard to explain, but they asked Graham when they had 7 blockers, so you've got 8 gaps on offense, and the Eagles want to put 7 guys on defense, so there's an open gap. And usually when you leave an open gap like that, the open gap is going to be in the middle of your defense. But for the Eagles, the open gap was on the end. When Jones reads that, he's going to see I'm going to go attack the end. Graham needs to understand that, but he sees 2 tight ends releasing downfield. He sees the middle zone read. He's got to take all of this information in, and if he guesses wrong, it should be a gainer, but you ought to have somebody in that 8th gap behind him to stop it. Because it was 1st and 10 on their 12. You can't just sit there and say, okay, we're going to expect them to pass the football. It was a run look, and you should have played the run look, and they were in a pass look, and when Graham guessed wrong, it's 80 yards.
Let's go to there's a 4th down play. There's been a lot of questions about the short yardage and red zone calls. They have a 4th down. They bring in Hakeem Butler, who I don't know that's ever taken a snap. What did you think about that call there, getting him one-on-one? He wasn't even lined up on the right side of the field for one thing, but what did you think there? That call's getting a lot of question here.
He does, and now mind you that was his first offensive snap in the NFL. But I think the Eagles looked at it as, okay, we're going to try and surprise the Giants. Mind you, they practiced that play. It wasn't like this is something they had in practice. So they say we're going to practice with them. We think he can do this play in practice, and we're going to isolate him. The Giants are never going to think we're going to throw it to him. So they put 3 guys on the other side of the line. They put motion on the other side of the line, totally isolate him. In fact, Logan Ryan, when the ball is snapped, he's still running towards the play, and he's 4 yards away. So if you knew to throw, if you could make an adjustment and throw a real quick pass, fine, you could do it, but you still have to throw the fade, and Ryan goes over there, and it's all over him. It should have gotten pass interference. But everything about that call looks good. Do you trust Butler for that? Maybe not, but I mean, the Eagles were looking at it saying, we want to surprise these guys, and we think we surprised them. We might be able to get a touchdown out of it, and it just turns out their player didn't make a play. I still like the call.
So what's the unsung moment of that game or player in that game?
Johnston's the unsung player, the punter. There's a metric called expected points added, and expected points added, it takes into account game situations and a variety of things. So it gives more value to a 10-yard completion late in the game that clinches the game than it does if you get one on 3rd and 17 in the first half. He helped them get a 1.5 edge in punting expected points added, and he's done that multiple times this season, and he's getting them out of situations. He's not Ray Guy, but he's getting them out of situations and being able to put out big punts and flip field position at times when the Eagles really need it. And I think that the numbers don't look so great, but you start looking at the tape and the situations, he's an unsung player.
Well, they'll need everything they can get the way they're playing. They'll play the Cowboys next week. We'll break that game down with KC Joyner here. We'll get one thought on every game in the NFL, week number 7, which gets underway this Sunday right here on 97.3 ESPN. All right, here we go. The Sunday slate for you guys here. It all starts at 1 o'clock. We'll have it for you with Pittsburgh and Tennessee. Let's start off with a goodie. We have this game coming up. Pittsburgh undefeated, Tennessee undefeated. Maybe one of the best games of the year so far. You get the running game of Tennessee. Pittsburgh plays great defense. This one should be a lot of fun.
It's only the 8th game in NFL history where teams are 5-0 or better coming into their matchup. Only the 8th time this has happened like this. So, I mean, it's one of the great matchups of the season and could be one of the great matchups in NFL history. The Titans, both offenses are playing really well, but the Tennessee has allowed 30-plus points in 3 of the past 4 games. So I think their defense is going to give up more big plays than Pittsburgh. So I take Pittsburgh, but it's a total toss-up.
That one should be fun. We have it for you coming up on 97.3 ESPN. Cleveland, Cincinnati, they've played once before. This one's in Cincinnati. Obviously, Burrow. If you're at Cincinnati, you probably feel more stable at the quarterback position than Cleveland does, but Cleveland's a favorite.
Yeah, well, Cleveland likes their quarterback. He's just banged up and has the rib injury and got beat up a little bit last week, too. Cincinnati scores 27 points, gets nearly 400 offensive yards last week against one of the best defenses in the league, and the Browns had their worst game of the year. But I still take talent over everything else, and the Browns are still the more talented team. So I'm going to give them a slight edge in this one, maybe confidence level 3.
All right, let's go to Detroit, Atlanta. Not a great game, but Atlanta got a win. Detroit, they picked up a couple of interesting wins. Now they go on the road. They get a chance to get another one on here. Can they get a road victory?
It's going to be interesting to see Detroit can keep going at this running game because now they've got Swift to go with Peterson. They've been bell cowing Peterson pretty much, and now they got Swift in there, and he gives them more of a breakaway ability, but now they don't have to bell cow him either. So now they've got the 1-2 punch they want. But, I mean, look at Julio Jones coming back and look what it does for the Atlanta offense. I think Atlanta's offense has enough firepower, and the Lions just don't have quite as much. I'll take Atlanta this one.
He's NFL insider KC Joyner looking at the Sunday slate. Here we go. Carolina, New Orleans. New Orleans down a couple of weapons. Carolina's always kind of sneaky. Bridgewater trying to show New Orleans, hey, you maybe should have thought about me. Can they do it on the road, though?
The Saints have given up 27 or more points in 4 straight contests, and they had 2 takeaways in that span on defense. So they're not playing well on defense. And now they're missing Thomas, missing Sanders. They only have 3 wide receivers on their roster right now. I mean, the guys are going to be playing in this game, so they get one more injury. You can't even go a 3 wide receiver set. It's really tough for them. Having said that, Carolina's run defense is really bad. You've got Kamara, you've got Murray. I think they might run the ball 35 to 40 times between them, so I'll take the Saints still.
All right, that one should be fun. Got Buffalo and the Jets. This one won't be so much fun. Even though the Jets are at home, they're a double-digit underdog. Buffalo's lost 2 straight, but the Jets seem just what the doctor orders for a team on a 2-game losing skid.
Yeah, the Bills' offense is people have figured out what to do with the 3 and 4 wide receiver sets. They're playing a lot more zone against them. It's kind of screwing up Josh Allen's reads. But, I mean, Pro Football Reference has a metric called expected points added. I was talking about earlier. The Jets have minus 56.2 points in that category. It's 30 points worse than Washington, the next worst team. That's how atrocious their offense is. I'd be surprised if the Jets can score more than 7. So Buffalo easy in this one.
All right, NFC East, Dallas wins. They're hanging in there with Philly. If not, man, you got one of the ugliest divisions in the history of the league. Washington would have beaten Philly and Dallas if they can pull this one off. So Dallas in Washington in the NFC East.
I think if the Eagles would have won Game 1, they would have been 3-1 right now. We'd be talking different, but that's the state of the East. Teams aren't winning the games they're supposed to win. The Cowboys have given up 34 or more points in 5 straight games. They've only generated 2 turnovers all year long. They've got 1 sack in 3 different games. I mean, they're awful. Having said that, they still have so many more playmakers on offense than Washington. Washington has McLaurin, maybe Gibson, and that's about it. So I'll take with Dallas by the slightest of margins.
All right, Green Bay going to Houston. Green Bay coming off of a pretty bad loss against Tampa. Houston got their first win. Now they're back home. Can the Texans pull off an upset here, or is it going to be 2 straight ugly games for Green Bay?
Surprisingly, Romeo Crennel, defensive coach, since he's taken over, the Texans have posted 30 or more points and 400 or more offensive yards in 2 straight games, so he's been helping that side of the ball. The problem for them is that they gave up 601 offensive yards last week, and they've allowed 160 more rushing yards in all but 1 contest. The Packers might not have Aaron Jones. He's kind of banged up, but they've got Dillon. They've got Jamal Williams. They've got plenty of players to be able to go after that defense. I'll take Green Bay pretty handily.
All right, you have a interesting one here with Tampa Bay and Vegas. Now, this was supposed to be the Sunday nighter. They've moved it to a Sunday afternoon, and who knows where it could end up. It could be Monday. It could be Tuesday. It could be all over the place. But Brady and the Bucs looking to get another one here on the road.
The thing about the Bucs, everybody's talking about how great their defense is, and they're right. I mean, they're still pretty good on offense, and Gronk finally looks like he's doing something. Imagine if they get Evans, Godwin, and Gronk going, and you get Cameron Brate, and if Scotty Miller gets healthy, that's a really good offense, and their defense has just been, again, to be able to dominate the Packers says a lot. With Vegas having all the problems with their offensive line, the possible COVID issues, and all those other things, I just think Tampa's got a lot more past the victory.
All right, you go to Kansas City and Denver. Got Kansas City, almost a double-digit favorite on the road. Denver said, hey, we just went to New England last week and won. How about a little respect here?
I'll give Denver some respect, but the thing is, as I mentioned many times, for the Chiefs, their problem is getting into shootout games. They're 5-4 in shootout games over the past 2 years. That's games where each team scores 24 or more points. If they don't get into a shootout game, they're 15-1. Denver's only scored 21 or more points once this year, and that was against the Jets. I don't think they score more than 21 to this one, so I'll take Kansas City hands down. All
right, you go to New England, who lost last week at home. They're at home again against San Francisco, traveling across the country. San Francisco has had all sorts of injury issues, and now they've lost some bad home games. Can they travel across the country and pick up a tough win at New England?
The general consensus is that New England's going to win this one, but I like San Francisco because New England is 2-0 in games where they have a turnover differential advantage, and they're 0-3 when they don't. They just don't have the offense that can overcome if they have some mistakes on offense. And frankly, Cam Newton's playing pretty badly right now. And I think that the 49ers have posted 3 games of 0 turnovers, so I think they're more likely to win the turnover battle. So I'll take them by a slight margin.
All right, let's go to the Chargers and Jacksonville. The Chargers, you look at their record and you wouldn't, I guess they don't really stand out. They're the Chargers. No one really pays attention. But 1-4, Jacksonville has been a complete mess since their opening week win against the Colts.
Yeah, they've been switching to Herbert at quarterback is a huge plus for them because they kept thinking they're going to go Tyrod Taylor. But Herbert, last 2 games, 576 offensive yards and 7 touchdowns. So, I mean, he can put up those sorts of big plays. And the Jaguars' defense has given up 30 or more points in 5 straight contests and allowed 2 of its last 3 foes to tally 180 or more rushing yards. And I think the Chargers, even with their running back issues, they can get the running game going. And I don't think Jacksonville's offense is going to be able to do very well. So Chargers pretty handily.
All right, like the Chargers handling that one. This one here is on 97.3 ESPN. By the way, we'll have the 49ers and Patriots today. Sunday as well. Seattle and Arizona. That's now your Sunday night football game. That one was moved, and it's a good one. You got undefeated Seattle going to Arizona. Arizona was on primetime last week, so, man, who knew the Cardinals were going to be a back-to-back primetime team? But they're a lot of fun, young team. But can they pull off a win? I know they're at home, but can they pull off a tough win against an undefeated Seattle team?
It's going to be tough. Seattle's defense has given up 400 or more yards to every team this year. I mean, they're just atrocious. The big plus for them, though, is they get 2 turnovers a game, which is a lot. They got 32 last year, and then that was, I think, 4th best in the league, and they're on pace to get that many this year. When you get that many turnovers, you can make up for the fact that you're giving up a lot of yards. Plus, Arizona, they might be, DeAndre Hopkins looks like he's going to play, but he's banged up. So if you don't have him going at full strength, I just don't think Arizona's offense has quite enough firepower. So I'll take Seattle.
All right, Monday night, it's Chicago and the Rams. We will dive a little deeper into that one when Casey's back on Monday to give us one thought on every Week 7 game and a preview of that one. It's Indy, Miami, Minnesota, and Baltimore that have the byes this week. There's your look at week number 7, your Sunday slate right here on 97.3 ESPN. He is the football scientist, KC Joyner. He joins us Mondays and Fridays with a look at all the NFL games. Casey, enjoy all the football.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it.
As always, he, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. Great to go around the league with him.